What did I learn in Psych? We went through a lot of content about understanding how to understand students and the way they learn. The content involved studies about cognitive development, social and moral development, and conditioning and learning processes. Understanding these ideas as future educators brings out the best techniques and strategies for the classroom to ensure student success. The information I have gained from this semester will benefit me greatly in my future career. As teachers, we have a strong foundation. We have to have a strong foundation of classroom management that starts by setting goals, expectations, and rules of respect for the students. We also have to build relationships with all our students and understand how each student learns to meet their needs. This will give the students the best learning experience. First, I learned about cognitive process through Piaget's theory of cognitive development. Piaget believed that humans go through four stages. The two that are most valuable would be the pre-operational and concrete operational stages. These stages are believed to fall under 2 to 11 years of age. In my future of elementary education, I hope to understand why this information is important. Using Piaget's theory of cognitive development, we can understand how to implement differentiated instruction in the classroom. A student who is in the pre-operational stage is often egocentric and understands things only that affect him or her. This can help reason with students and find ways to work with them on everyday tasks. In the concrete operational stages, students should be able to think logically. Reaching the stage for students can be done at different paces, so a form of differentiation could be if a student completes an assignment correctly or quickly than anyone else. They may need difficult problems or a longer set of problems. In Bronfenbrenner's circle of cognitive development, he shows us how students develop their influences. The smaller circle of influences starts with family and friends. They are the direct influences that dictate their behavior or actions, then move on to the influences of teachers, coaches, mentors, or friends. These are the influences that can help build their personality outside of their immediate environment. In the classroom, you can connect their outside influences to the classroom and build relationships with them. Appropriate connections can be built for engagement. For example, if March Madness is something that they enjoy, you can make a bracket of books that they're reading and have them pick out which ones they like the most. This gets them involved in reading if they struggle with it. The next form of instruction that was introduced was scaffolding. This form of differentiated instruction that gives students hints or cues to help them. We introduced the zone of proximal development, which is the sweet spot we as teachers can see within our students. Understanding a student's CPD can help us place students with MKO or the more knowledgeable other. During scaffolding, the job of a teacher or an MKO is to help students who are struggling by not giving them the answers but encouraging them to find the answer. Scaffolding techniques can be used during partner work or group work. Using these strategies can help students learn on their own while having a good support system. Erickson's stages of psychosocial development help teachers understand the way students are developing socially. We can determine that by looking at industry versus inferiority stage or the identity versus role confusion stage. Understanding where students are emotionally can help build those student-teacher relationships. During industry versus inferiority, you can identify which techniques are working for supporting students. When students begin to feel inferior in their learning, teachers can help build back their confidence. In the identity versus role confusion stage, you can identify when students are figuring out their interests and strengths. As a teacher, it's important that we understand those emotions. In Kohlberg's stage of moral development, we learned about how students' interactions and reactions can be affected by their moral stage. Students are first influenced by their parents and family, and we can see their influences from schools, sports, or other hobbies. In the classroom, we can use these morals to guide the view for students, but you can't overstep by forcing them on students. As a teacher, you have to be very considerate of other point of views in the classroom, so you typically avoid those controversial topics. Students have their own influences like family, and you don't want to interfere with those family values. Operant conditioning is all about punishing or reinforcing behavior. This can be positive or negative in the classroom. It is most common to see positive reinforcement because students often do better with rewards. Punishment can be tough in the classroom because it can cause dislike or opposition when establishing punishments for behavior. A way to set up an indirect form of positive reinforcement would be a reward system in the classroom. For example, there can be a jar of marbles and every student behaves well, they can put a marble in the jar. Once the jar is full, the class gets an incentive for their positive behavior. This can encourage positive behavior in the classroom and set up classroom management. Classical conditioning is a lot like operant conditioning, however, it's all about repetition. Classical conditioning involves repeated behavior for a desired reaction or behavior that follows. This involves learning because when setting up the classroom for classroom management, students can indirectly go through classical conditioning. It is very important to set up the classroom environment as positive and safe. That all starts with how teachers let students respect themselves, other students, and the classroom. For example, if you are working on having your students keep the room tidy after an activity, once it's time to clean up, you can shut off the lights as they're signed to clean up. The information processing model gives us an example of how students take in information. It demonstrates how students absorb information through all their senses. Students often learn to the way so they can feel it. So while assessing students, we can take into consideration how students have may felt while learning the topic. Interleaving is a technique that was studied through the information processing model. It is a practice where you study a couple of things, then you move on to the next topic. Then you go back over and you learned more things and add more information. This helps build strong connections in students' brains. So how is all this information that I've gone over today going to benefit me in my future career? I understand that it is important for teachers to build relationships and meet the needs of their students. Knowing these techniques will help me grow as an educator to help achieve the goal of reaching all of my students.